One of the things I do think is interesting is that when you kind of like talk, we're all like, what, 21? You find that kind of successful people who are like 10, 20, 30 years older, who've kind of all done it, they kind of quite like helping younger people, especially people who like kind of have their values in the right place or are kind of like ambitious, who are like kind of creative, that they kind of enjoy helping that. And I found something that was really, when I finished like year 12 in high school, I just found all my buddies who had like, who I kind of knew had rich dads, and I was like, what's your dad's contact? And I just emailed them all, and I was like, can I sit down with you for like an hour? Like, I'm finishing high school, awesome. Need to try and work out where I'm going. Anyway, then it was the richest guy ended up coming. I went into like his big office in the city. He's like, big flex, like with the view everywhere. And I thought I'd get 15 minutes. He ended up sitting down with me for an hour, and it was like, that guy would have, it would be, that time would be kind of worth a lot of money, but as much as it's altruistic, it's also like they kind of probably enjoy helping young people who kind of ambitious in a sense.
Yeah, and this is something, like, I'm glad you bring this up, because this is something I'm very passionate about. I think that a lot of people in university want to get to a certain place. Let's say it's a job in a certain company. They spend a lot of their time focusing on academics and studying. But if they spent maybe 10% of that time reaching out to people, getting to know people, everyone wants to help someone young. I've never met a single person that doesn't, like, literally just says, no, I don't want to help you. Maybe they don't have time, which is fine, but everyone wants to help someone young. We're the future generation. And I think that there's so many CEOs, there's so many people who've had a lot of life experience, and there's definitely someone in the career that you want to go into or what you want to do in your life that has 1 hour to sit down and talk to you, and those learnings are invaluable.
It's far easier to get ahead from just like one conversation rather than like 20 hours of study. Yeah. Just something really niche in like finance or like economics, whatever you're studying.
Yeah.
But you sort of start to learn like in the business world, and when you start working in like the private sector, is that relations and people it's everything.
Yeah.
Like that's something I've learned in the past couple of weeks in my current job. It's about people, about meeting people, about reaching out. And I think when you're young, you do have a tendency not to do that because you're sort of scared of like what people will think of you and rejection. But then you sort of find out you don't really get rejected that much.
And I think, if I can interrupt, a big thing for me with that was that sometimes when I initially was starting to reach out, I'd be like, oh, I don't have anything of value to add. But then I worked at a certain company where I was very close with the CEO, and he kind of told me this, and it's always stuck with me. He's like, dude, no one knows what's going on. Everyone just pretends they know what's going on. And I haven't seen anything to this day. I've worked at a few companies now that's challenged that, right? It's all about talking like you know something.
Dude, as a side note, I would say that's exactly what happens on every news TV show, is that all the pundits and the hosts pretend they know what's going on, but they don't know what's going on. But getting back to the point, I think you're exactly right. Like, the concept of like actually understanding what the downside risk is in something. So like if you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn,
it's no downside risk.
The downside risk is they don't reply, or they might say no. It's like, that's actually, you didn't lose anything. They didn't hurt you. They didn't do anything.
What's on the other side of fear?
What's on the other side of fear?
I think, but what you touched on was that you often you don't feel validated enough to like speak to certain people. So like I've felt this like a lot, like sort of prisoner's dilemma. What was it called? Imposter syndrome. That's an economic game theory thing. But like imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't like deserve to be sitting on a table with them. Yeah. Like you're not smart enough, and then you start to realize like they're still learning as well.
Well, for all the people who are watching for girl advice, it's actually like if you go and talk to a girl, the worst thing that can happen is she might say, no, you're ugly, whatever, but that's literally the worst thing that can happen.
It never happens to you, do
I can't say, I've just heard it from people. But no, it's like, you could have like a really good conversation, like, could light a flame, as they say, but that's a positive, but the downside is literally nothing. And I think it's something to keep in mind when like you make decisions. Same as like starting a podcast, right? Because you do naturally, like as a person, have all these kind of weird feelings, and like you either get in front of the camera or you start like a creative project, and it's like you make yourself vulnerable to like other. Well, it's like vulnerable in a sense, but it's not really that vulnerable. I mean,